Thank you for that. It's very nice to be here again. I would recall that it's the 12th of June, and that's quite a historic time in European history, because the decision of the Irish people on the 12th of June is that last year has further procrastinated the protracted and controversial attempt to reform and improve our system of common governance and to strengthen the European Union so that it can face up more squarely and effectively to the challenges of globalization and the present situation that we find ourselves in. It's true that I'm here to sell my book, and I do not apologize for that, because the salary of an MEP, contrary to press comment, isn't quite what it could be. And I searched for a place where I thought I could potentially sell a considerable pile of my books, and I discovered that 964 people on the 12th of June here is that last year declined to accept the treaty, and I thought if I could sell 109,964 books, I'd be doing very well. That's why I'm here. I could build quite a duck pond. But it's also true that I have, as Tony described, published on previous treaties, because I've found that it's an awfully good approach to understanding treaties by not only drafting them and speaking about them, but also putting pen to paper where greater clarity and comprehension is required to explain something that is intrinsically complex and even opaque. And of course, we know that in the exercise to recuperate from the defeat of the Constitutional Treaty in 2005, we had to undertake an exercise in obscurantism to some extent, to repackage and restructure and to a certain extent improve upon the 2004 treaty. But in that rather opaque negotiation, it was clear that we have a lot of explaining that we have to do to our public, our press, but also our parliaments. And I am very struck how few of the MEPs will actually appreciate the great growth of the powers of the Parliament that they are on the brink of enjoying should the treaty be brought to force. And so a further purpose of this book is to train my colleagues in the Parliament to actually grapple effectively with the powers that they're going to enjoy. I think that we've become far too focused on process of bringing the thing into force to the distraction of the substance, the argument over the substance of the treaty. Certainly in Great Britain, and entirely neglected to expose the quality of the substance of the treaty, which has, of course, meant that all sorts of falsehoods could be spoken about it with impunity in the political debate. We do know of the libertas phenomenon, which is not, it was bred here, but it's not exclusive to Ireland. I think it would be foolish for us to think that toxic, the untruthfulness and the perverse belief that you can be pro-European but opposed to the treaty reform, it would be foolish to think that belief has been quashed, either here or elsewhere. So I've tried in this book to put it in the contemporary context of the crises that we now confront, the financial turmoil, the economic crash, the crisis over climate change, the important questions of international insecurity. For example, on the financial and the economic crisis, we have the strengthening of the Eurogroup, which I think is of great potential importance, which hasn't been properly explained. We have the fact that we have got to return to the Stability and Growth Pact and reform the budgetary and financial system of the EU before 2014. An exercise in itself which is going to be very difficult, as it always is, but an exercise which will be greatly facilitated because we have the treaty in force. And here the Parliament, of course, will play an absolutely key function in shaping the reform of the financial system. We have the power of assent in all of this, and we will exercise that to the maximum of our potential to try to inject a more fluent, buoyant and progressive financial system into the EU, and to alter its size and its shape. The fact that Parliament will have powers of co-decision over CAP, plus the full powers over the budget, is going to make Parliament the key player in this exercise of the reform of the financial system. We also will be prominent in the current discussions about strengthening the regulatory framework for the banking, insurance and securities sector. I think that the treaty will bring in this area of finance and economy practicable solutions to things that have puzzled us in the past and have frustrated serious reform. I would be surprised if a conclusion from the present crisis was not to strengthen the federal character of the economic and monetary system. With respect to the climate change issue, we are confronting an autumn of important preparation for the Copenhagen conference in December. And the fact that the treaty extends the competence of the EU to address not only pollution control matters, but also climate change is important. So is the extension of the powers of the EU from the demand side of the common energy policy to the supply side. That also is a thing which is hidden, perhaps in this treaty, which ought to be brought out and exposed and exploited. In the field of foreign security and defence policies, of course, we have the External Action Service, we have the Foreign Minister. I mustn't call him that, but I suspect we are going to call him that, in the Commission. And we have the chance of creating a core group of states in the defence policy area, the permanent structured cooperation in defence, a concept that the present treaty actually precludes. We aren't able to form a core group in the defence field if we do not pass this treaty into force. And then we have the whole set of improvements to the institutions, streamlining of the decision-making procedures, the rationalization of the instruments. Things we will be exposed to the justified criticism that we are ineffective and clumsy. It was a problem fighting this election campaign because we had expected, of course, the treaty to have been in force, and we had expected us to be able to say, look, the Parliament has become truly a powerful and important player in these matters. We ought to be able, in 2014, to be able to say that. The present uncertainty about the appointment of the Commission, the problem that President Barroso now is in, because he is not, I think, to be formally nominated on Thursday as he had expected. And Parliament will probably decide to postpone its approval of President the candidate for the presidency of the Commission until September, probably, so that we can seek to put into effect the spirit of the treaty, which says that we ought to be consulted on the both the programme and the composition of the college. We have also suffered from a presidency of the which has effectively collapsed, and it strengthens the argument for this permanent president of the European Council at the top, but also for the foreign minister chairing the Council of Foreign Affairs. We also have seen the spectacle of two presidents, Kaczynski and Klaus, who have failed to exercise as the individuals their collective responsibility on behalf of the European Council. The fact that the European Council is going to be grounded in the treaty is a tremendous step forward, and it will be obliged to conform to the disciplines of procedure and of the checks and balances that all the other of the institutions are. And one of the key things to anticipate, I think, is the European Council's rules of procedure, which will have to be both drafted and published before the spring of this next year, as a consequence of the treaty. I'm quite often asked, on the strength of my experience in all this, which, as you said, is going back now some time, if we have made any fundamental blunders in our approach to this. And I think that we have. I think the first is that we should have been more conscious of how problematic it was going to be to explain and to sell these rather arcane things we were up to the press and the public. We became too preoccupied with the drafting, and we didn't think sufficiently politically about just how this would look after it all came out. That was a mistake which we all, I think, share the blame for. A second thing we ought to have done is not to have claimed that this was it, that this was the final concretized settlement for all time. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing said that this treaty would survive for 50 years. I think that was a mistake. I think it's also not true, actually, and that the idea that there can be more fluency, that we can improve further to respond to changing economic and social and political circumstances is actually both important and attractive. And I think that was a factor in the Irish decision. They thought that somehow they're being trapped inside something which in the future would be very difficult to alter. I drew inspiration, and I speak of this here, from James Madison, who told the 13 state assemblies that he would be interested in their conclusions. The arguments that took place inside their state assemblies as part of the ratification process. And, of course, following on very fast from that experience, we had the historic First Amendment, 3-4 years from the bringing into force of the Constitution, and that sprang directly from the complaints and criticisms that had been applied to it as a part of the exercise of bringing it into force. So we now face the second Irish historic decision. I'm encouraged at the departure of some of the key opponents of the treaty. I'm also encouraged at the quality and incisiveness of the Rectas report on the Treaty of the autumn, which I thought was very good. I think it ought to have come earlier, of course, but I actually was very impressed at its clarity and its the sharpness of its conclusions. It is refreshing to see a national parliament grappling to explain all these issues to itself and to its public. I do hope that the organisation of civil society will be much stronger and more effective than it was in the previous exercise. And of course, it is crucial that there is a pact between the pro-treaty parties so they don't squabble as they did so directly in the first referendum campaign. I've got two chapters in this book on the Irish question, which you might like to draw some good conclusions for as you approach this big test. And the other thing that we have to achieve before we can be certain of success is to keep Gordon Brown in place and cheerful as he is, slightly sheepishly, as he signed the treaty. He doesn't really do smile. But anyway, I'm very pleased to have been able to publish this, and I do hope it will help substantiate the argument, which is an extremely strong argument for the reform treaty, despite the fact that we all know it's got some aspects of it which are not perfect. It's the optimum which can be achieved in terms of integration at the present time. And we were discussing earlier the current drafting of the Irish guarantees, which will be done, and it will be done by Thursday in the early hours of the morning, perhaps, Dick, who knows. But the fact that it's proving quite a problem to draft these things is also a signal that this is a good treaty, that this is the optimum which can be agreed at this time, and to go further in any direction is quite tricky. But anyway, we are all on your side on this, Dick, and we'll are confident that in the early hours of Friday morning there'll be a successful agreement, and that we can then all go forward and campaign throughout the summer period and through to a historic success for the Irish people and state on behalf of us all. Thank you.